Why being dumped was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I was on Facebook, and I just recently got back on Facebook. I enjoy it. Not gonna lie to you. Once you get over the politics, you're like, yeah, it's fine. And I reached out to a friend of mine, my best friend in high school, Mike, and I hadn't seen Mike or talked to him in freaking 20 years or something like that. It's just anyway, long story short, he's just my best friend, man, and always loved Mike, and he's out in California now, just crushing. And when we lived in Phoenix back in the late '90s, early 2000s, Mike got married in Baltimore, and we went to his wedding and all that stuff. And it's just a solid guy. But I was just wondering for some reason I just looked him up because I haven't bothered looking anyone up on Facebook, and he's just crushing. And it got me thinking, it's like, Mike's doing great. I looked up some of my other friends, I couldn't really find them. And I was like, I just wonder what they're doing. And I'm not like, oh my goodness, I want to go back to high school. No, I hated high school, dude. I mean, I like my friends and stuff, but dude, I hated high school. Ugh. But anyway, I started thinking, it's like, I've done actually pretty well. I've done pretty well, and I'm doing well. And it occurred to me, the reason I'm doing well is because I successfully finished my tour in the Army. If I did not finish my tour in the Army, I'm not here today. I just telling you. I mean, I'm not saying I'm dead, but I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Freaking, I don't know. And digging ditches for a living or something like that. Because I was a freaking loser. And when I say loser, academically, I was a loser. Just barely graduated, way towards the bottom of my class, dude. Ugh. But it occurred to me, it's like I remember this when I was in the Army. I'd been dumped like probably 2 months before I went in. And I'd never been dumped before. I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? I was always the one dumping people. So it hurt, dude. Not gonna lie. I was like, I was pissed. I was like, what the? I couldn't believe it. And rightly so. I was an asshole to the girlfriend. And I've had other girlfriends I was assholes to, and I don't know why they didn't dump me. But I was a narcissistic ass. But anyway, this chick did. And again, rightly to. I hope she's doing okay, because, man, putting up with me is, you get a gold medal for that. But anyway, and it occurred to me, when I was in the Army, there's basically two ways I could have gone. I could have failed out or gone where I am today. And if I was still dating this girl, you know what I'm saying? And I could say, I wasn't good at it. I mean, that's a turd sandwich. I could easily said, this isn't for me. I'm going to go back to my girlfriend back in Maryland and just, smoke and joke and have fun. I had nothing planned. I was going to college, and I was working at freaking, Staples, just as an aisle manager. And I, maybe would have gone up the ranks. So I've always been a good worker. I've always had that, the engine inside of me to be a good worker. But who knows? Maybe I would have just been smoking, because back then I was drinking, I was smoking cigarettes, smoking bad things. Who knows, man? Maybe I would have gotten even worse stuff. But when I was in basic training and the chips were down, I had this drive to say, I cannot fail. I cannot go back and without a girlfriend and be a loser. And I cannot go back and let my friends and my ex-girlfriend know that I failed out. I'll never forget that, dude. Not that, the funny thing is, once you leave a scenario, no one cares anymore. It's like you quit your job, you think people are going to be thinking about you. I wonder what Josh is doing now that he's left. No one cares. Everyone just goes on their life. And that's just the way it is. It's hard. It's hard because you're thinking, when I quit my job and I retire, people are going to think, oh man, we really miss Josh. No one does. You know what I'm saying? They just move on with their lives. And even when I was in the Army, all my friends who were still in high school and stuff are still back there or had gone to college. They didn't care. You know what I'm saying? Because everyone just moves on. That's okay. You don't know that when you're young, but I just remember thinking, there's a guy, a Puerto Rican guy that we had, Rosario, and he had a girlfriend back. He was from New York City. And he left basic training. He went AWOL. And I remember, we're surprised by it, but he had a girlfriend back home, and he said he just got sick of it. He said, I'm just going to go back with her. I don't want this. He just left. I don't know how we got it. I think we had to leave or something. He just never came back. So we went AWOL. And I don't know whatever happened to that guy. I don't know. But the same thing could happen to me. And the only reason I didn't is because I said, I got to prove this girl wrong, that she made a mistake in dumping me. Isn't that crazy? Once you finally get out of basic training, and for me, I was like, all right, hey, I accomplished this. I'm feeling pretty good. I get to my active duty unit. I'm still a turd sandwich, but it wasn't so much at that point the motivation. Now it's like, hey, I've done the hard part. Now I just got to make sure I don't screw up where I get kicked out, because you don't want to get dishonorable discharge. And at that stage, you're like, hey, I can do this. I can do this for another 3 years. That's my tour, 3 years and 14 weeks, and I can get the GI Bill, and I can better my life and go to college, which is exactly what I did. How I met Charlotte. You know what I'm saying? And how I turned out, it's like, man, I'm a pretty good student after all. In college, I won all kinds of academic awards and all. I mean, all kinds of stuff, dude. And I did, I wouldn't say I got all A's, but I had, at least a 3.3 or 3.5, something. I don't know what I had, but that's pretty stellar academically. And that would never have happened if I didn't get dumped. Because I think if I didn't get dumped, I would have been like Rosario. I would have said, this is too hard. I'm going to go back and just hang out. And then whoa, isn't that crazy? I tell you, man, I don't even know, there's no moral of the story here. It just occurred to me. It's like, because, I'm doing good, man. I got 4 kids, got a nice house, got a beautiful wife, making money. Uncle Sam, I pay Uncle Sam a lot of money in taxes. And will that have to continue? I don't know. I got a beautiful, beautiful dog. My other beautiful, beautiful dog's outside. And I just life's good. But it could have easily not been good. And I tell you, man, it's like there's what they say, I chose the path of least resistance. I don't know what that guy says. Thoreau, whatever the guy's name is, I chose the untrampled path or whatever. I don't know what it is. But, you got this freaking, I was planting some, if you wonder why my hand's so dirty, it's just out in the garden. If you got, you choose the path of least resistance sometimes, especially when you're young and dumb. But my path of least resistance was to stay in the Army, to show everybody that I'm not a failure, that I'm not a loser, that no one should have disrespected me or dumped me or anything like that. And I just, and I don't know, man. If I didn't have that, I think I just would have walked away and said, screw this guy, I'm done with this. Kind of like ultimately when I went to Ranger School, I don't even know how the hell I went to Ranger School. I mean, for some reason they chose me to go to pre-Ranger at Fort Drum. Somehow I passed. I don't know how I did that. I mean, I said, okay. And next thing I know, in Ranger School, somehow I passed the first cycle. I don't even know how I did that. And then somehow I was almost past the second cycle. I got recycled. So let me try it again. But by the time the third time, I was like, I'm done with this. So there's nothing left. There's no motivation at that point. It's called a lack of motivation when you cancel out of Ranger School. It's called an LOM. And I literally said, I don't have nothing that's driving me anymore. There's no one to prove anything. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't care, but I knew I wasn't going to stay in the Army. I was like, the only thing I thought it would be cool to pass, so I could say, hey, man, and I passed Ranger School, but it wasn't enough to keep me trying. Look, I was there for freaking 4 months. It wasn't like I just showed up one day and left. I was motivated enough. At some point, I was like, I literally had a lack of motivation. And so I was done, but still, even now, I was still proud of myself. I said, no, I still did this. For a guy who looked like during basic training, he was about this close to failing out, which I was, because I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in rifle and marksmanship until I figured out what I was doing wrong. To a guy who's about to fall out during a road march, and if you fall out, you gotta get recycled. And I remember Sergeant Ortiz, Drill Sergeant Ortiz said, Scanlon, let's go. You only got a half mile left. half mile. And I just remember thinking, this engine of motivation, say, I gotta prove this girl who done me wrong. It's crazy, man. And I don't know how people have a motivation without being slighted. And I don't know what it is. You feel slighted, you feel like, what if you weren't slighted? Would you even have that sense of motivation? You hear about these special forces guys. And I had a guy when I was in Ranger School, Captain Johnson. I'm sure I shared this story with you before, but he told me, in special forces school, the hardest thing is that you don't know when the end is. The end could be, he told me about taking these 5-gallon water jugs, and they're freaking heavy. You just carry them, and you carry them until they tell you to stop. And I couldn't do that. I'd go nuts. I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. You got to, it could be they tell you to stop in 20 yards, 20 meters, whatever. It could be 200 meters, it could be 2,000. 2 clicks. I couldn't do that. Because how do you get that motivation? Where does that motivation come? And I always wonder, where do people get motivated from? For me, it was just that, being dumped. And then once you start getting successful, you're like, hey, no, I can do this. You start feeling proud of yourself. So, no, I can do this. That's a different type of motivation. Now you're like, I'm motivated because I'm good at this. I'm motivated because I'm good, as opposed to I'm motivated because people thought I was bad. And it's a different type. And I think that's where true success is. You're not motivated to prove other people wrong. You're motivated because you're like, no, I'm good. Let's get this party started. Anyway, someone has to think about being back on Facebook. If you got comments on it, where do you get your motivation from? I'd like to hear it. All right, God. And then, of course, paying off debt. Right now, my motivation is I hate my debt, so I'm motivated to make some money so I can pay off my mortgage. All right, God bless.